this particular moment as we celebrate the legacy and the life of our founder, Bishop Charles Harrison Mason, and of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Joshua chapter 1. Joshua chapter 1. The first 9 verses. Now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, unto the land which I do give to them, even the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and unto the great sea toward the going down of the sun, shall be your coast. There shall not any man be able to stand before you all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Be strong and of a good courage. For unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance the land which I swear unto their fathers to give them. Only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest. This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. I want to preach from this subject tonight. Just repeat it with me for clarity and say, we're living in a promised moment. Did we ever think that we would live to see such a day as we did on November 4th, 2008? A day when America would elect a black man as president of the United States of America. Did we ever think that we would live to see the day when the promissory note of participatory democracy issued in 1863 and 1865 to our people by Lincoln would finally be redeemed? But here we are, living in a moment in history no one ever expected to see in their lifetime. And what was so amazing to me on that historic day was not just what happened here in America or the elation around the country, but what really got me emotionally was the reaction around the world. To watch people in Japan shouting and dancing, to catch a glimpse of the Aboriginal people in Australia, and to see the Maori people in New Zealand, to see those in South Africa doing a little dance, and all of a sudden in every hamlet and city in the country of Kenya, the people spilled out into the streets and were shouting for their favorite son. And even in France and Germany, people were singing and excited about what was happening at that moment. But what troubled me were the political pundits attempting to be social critics for this historic moment. It seemed to me as if they had no historical perspective of what was happening at the moment. As if they had never cracked a book, had never read a sentence of American history. There was one pundit who made the statement saying, we are now beyond all this stuff. There's no more racism. It's all over now. There's no more oppression. There's no more poverty. We've gotten beyond that now. And in some strange kind of way, he said, we've made it to the promised land. And at that moment, something moved in my spirit as I sat in my hotel room in Memphis, Tennessee, after attending service at our annual Holy Convocation. I said, wait a minute. We are not in the promised land. We are in a promised moment, but not in the promised land. For at that very moment that I was celebrating the election of our nation's first black president, I was working the telephone lines discussing terrible news from back home in Springfield, Massachusetts, where a black church, a Church of God in Christ, the Macedonia Church of God in Christ, pastored by my bishop, Bishop Bryant Robinson, had been burned to the ground by 3 demented white men, angry about the election of a black man to the highest office in the land. No, my sisters and brothers, we are not in the promised land, but we are living in a promised moment. And I believe that the book of Joshua gives us an understanding of where we are to go from this moment. The book of Joshua helps us to understand the direction we must take as a church, the direction we must take as a people and as a nation. This book, standing just outside the Torah, gives us the direction of how we are to engage in this sacred moment. For the text is about an earth-shattering moment in history. It's about a moment of transition, a moment of change that literally alters the way that God's people will look at the world. The world must now be realigned and readjusted and reoriented to live in a post-wilderness and a pre-promised phase. The lives of all God's people are now defined by this post-Moses moment and this post-wilderness reality as Joshua ascends into leadership. No longer can the same cultural framework be used to understand what is happening. For these people in the book of Joshua, the landmarks are now all gone. No longer do they expect to get manna from heaven. No longer will there be water from rocks. No longer will they live in shotgun houses. No longer will they have to pick cotton or be sharecroppers. No, this is a post-wilderness moment. No longer will they deal with public accommodations that say Hebrews here and Egyptians over there. That moment is gone. This is a post-wilderness moment. A new generation has now risen, standing a few feet from the land that's flowing with milk and honey. And this new generation has no memory of the segregated days in Egypt. And they will live the majority of their lives in a society free from slavery. Segregation is no longer a reality burned into the psyche of these pilgrims who have access to all of the public accommodations. There are just stories that they have heard about the wilderness. But the oppression and the segregation are just stories that seem to be promoted by an aging population of folk that will one day be gone from the scene. And so this generation is on the edge of the promised land, poised to live a life that their ancestors could only dream about. They are post-wilderness and pre-promised children. Moses is dead and the Moses generation is gone. The progenitor of liberation theology and the adjunct professor of pastoral care is dead. They would still celebrate Moses. They would celebrate his sacrifice. They would celebrate his work. They would quote his speeches every now and then. Once a year, they'd have a Moses holiday where children would recite the famous Moses speech, "Let my people go." They never recite the entire speech. They just recite the words that everybody likes. They recite the good sounding part, because to recite the entire speech would have to engage the entire struggle through the wilderness. And so they just acknowledge the "let my people go" moment and lift up that grand nonviolent march as they march through the Red Sea, and God made a way for them to escape from the oppression of their enemy. It is a post-Moses time, and Joshua has been elected leader of this fledgling nation. It's interesting that Joshua is leading a nation that is in economic trouble because the people do not have the resources nor the money, though they are trying to become a better nation. They're trying to become a more perfect union. No one ever thought that this young man, Joshua, could ascend to the highest office in the land. Surely Miriam had the upper hand in the election to lead because she was Moses' sister. No one ever thought that one so young and new to the political process would rise up to lead the nation. Well, you see, the last time something like that happened was during the Hebraic Reconstruction period when Joseph arose from slavery and reached the perennial power of second in command next to Pharaoh. But now Moses is dead. Joshua has taken the reins of leadership and all is right with the world, or so it seems. No more oppression. No more class-based ideas of imperialism. No more manifest destiny propitiated upon the indigenous population. We can now get beyond the horrific moment of history called slavery because all is right with the world. But please hold on there before you go any further with this analysis, because many folk watching the rise of Joshua want to declare that all social action, all critique, all protests are now null and void. They're now irrelevant and unnecessary. There's no need for the NAAHP, the National Association for the Advancement of Hebrew People. There's no need for the United Hebrew College Fund. But wait a minute, it's true that Joshua and his people are free. No more slavery. It's true there's no more segregated housing in Joshua's day. It's true that domestic terrorists no longer wear white sheets and wander the southern regions of the border of Egypt. It's true that no longer is there legalized lynching. It's true that they have come a mighty long way. They live in a post-wilderness time and a pre-promised moment. They made it through the wilderness and they can see the promised land, but they are yet to possess it. And one of the most dangerous times, my sisters and brothers, for us to live in is in between your post-wilderness moment and your pre-promise moment. Because sometimes people get confused and think that just because they made it through the wilderness, that they must be in the promised land. And if the text tells us anything for this point in time, for this point in history, we are in the midst of a promised moment. But don't get that confused with the promised land. You see, Joshua has the ability individually, he has the resources, he has the wherewithal to be able to cross into the promised land. Joshua can do it by himself. He has the authority to cross out of the wilderness by himself. But this is Jewish literature, and Jewish literature is clear that success is not defined by what one person does. I wish I had some help in here. It's not defined by what 2 or 3 people can do, but it's defined by collective progress. When all of God's people can cross the Jordan and enjoy the land of milk and honey, then one can say we are in the promised land. And we cannot claim that they have arrived because they're still standing on the other side of the river looking at possibility and promise. And so as we celebrate the legacy of Bishop C.H. Mason and the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the leadership of President Barack Obama and of our presiding bishop, Without a doubt, that moment back in 2008 was one of the greatest moments in American history since